Hey guys, cheers for tuning in to another video. So this one, I'm a little bit late to the game. This is not really a reaction video. This is more of a way for me to try break down some of the information from the keynote from the Fanfest in Fanfest 2023 in Las Vegas. Now, I've got thoughts, especially when I saw a number of the slides and the way they were presented. I think when I watched some of the other content creators try to garner information on the keynote, they definitely went over to what was literally presented, but not necessarily the corporate side of it. Now, I don't own a business ish, but I have been in corporate business presentations. Now, the reason why I want to make this video compared to maybe the past expansion, this one felt a lot more corporate and it felt a lot more different compared to the previous ones in terms of the direction of Final Fantasy 14. I actually made a video a couple of weeks back, maybe a month or so back, going to talk about the direction of 14. I didn't realize when the FanFest for Vegas was coming up. That was sooner than I was expecting. I was expecting it maybe in later September. But because this came sooner, I wanted to disregard that video and see what we get in this FanFest in the keynote. It was definitely something that really jumped at me. The way, not just the information that was presented. Sorry for that. That's not me, can't control that. But it's also the way the slides were there. It was also how Yoshi P and the team were, their body language, the way they were presenting the information and what it was that really jumped at me. So I wanted to go over that, but so let's get into it. Let's watch the intro. Then I'm not going to cover the entire aspect. I'm going to be predominantly talking about things that jumped at me and what I felt was quite important to a player like myself that's been playing this game for a while, and how this will define the direction of the game going forward. I will feel it's going to be quite different.
Blue seas, clear skies, and boundless possibilities. I dare say our destination will soon be in sight.
Enjoying yourself for a change? Might you have a moment to speak further?
At last we have come to the land you call the New World. My home.
it also tried the theme of the expansion tries to sort of set the tone and to what you'll be facing. You might notice that during that trailer, I know it's just part of it, doesn't seem like there's a overarching bad guy to be faced like the run up to Endwalker, which was Zodiac, and it turned out to be Metian, whatever you want to call her. But this is not really presenting there's an overarching bad guy, but more of a theme, as it were. It also feels like the theme is not something that might have planned out, say, 2 expansions ago. There's something you heard about the Japanese do, I don't know if they still do it today, is they don't actually plan something more solid very much in advance, so they wouldn't really plan the exact thing, say 5 years ago. It's all in a drawing board, and what I'm trying to say is, what happens in Japanese media is that they do like a season of something, and then the reason why a lot of material is different, say like from, let's say, anime for example, is quite different to the manga as it goes on, is they want to see the audience reaction and how that, because they want to keep people watching. So if they need to make changes, they will do that. Or if there isn't like a manga, they will, before they do the second season, they will first read and watch the feedback to the first season or the second season, and then base the entire thing from there. So it definitely feels like this expansion, Dawn Trail, is from even Endwalker feedback. And one of the reasons why I think that is to do with Island Sanctuary. This whole expansion seems a little bit thematically based around Island Sanctuary and born from that. But that's an assumption that I just saw from that trailer. But the thing that reinforced that is something I'll talk about a bit later during this breakdown of this video. So I'll try my best to go through this. There's certain information. I'm not really interested about the CEO. I'm not really bothered about the NPCs we're going to have, but I do think it's strange Erenville's there. Just don't know why. It doesn't feel important. I really want Square Enix to stop doing 2 hub cities. I want them to have a 1 where there's the auction house, or market board in this case, the vendors for the end game gear, all of that in one place, instead of splitting it into 2. I just don't, I think that's pointless. And try to have things, I see what they want to do. They want people to visit different places or not have too many congested players in one place, but also for people to move around. But in all honesty, that might be fine for the first couple of weeks of the expansion, but not for the lifetime of it. So Square Enix, just have 1. By the way, there's something they mentioned here. I know I've skipped over it. They don't have video gameplay, but they have pictures. So it means they don't have a functioning world they can actually interact with. These are just development where they would just have, they can move around a developed world, but not, there's nothing to interact with. There isn't a player character, as it were. Which, when they said, because this is coming out summer of 2024, which could be by September 2024, something like that. But to have a year to basically have a finished expansion on release, but not have video footage right now of any kind of gameplay, is a little concerning, but it plays back to what I said earlier, where Japanese companies tend to develop properly and fully at full scale until they see the feedback of the current season or current expansion that we have, because they want to include what characters they want. They want to sort of see what kind of storyline the player base is expecting. Let me give you an example of this. People may disagree with me with this. When we look at Emmett Selch, whatever, and some of the Asians in their form, when we look at their introduction as Shadowbringers, they were quite loved. I mean, it was a very good way of telling their side of the story. But they were such fan favourites. When we come into Endwalker, there was a bit of what do you call it? Redemption? Essentially, they were so well loved in Shadowbringers. Square Enix could not, kill them off or make them still look like the bad guys that they actually were during up until before going back in time and Shadowbringers itself. So yeah, they seem to form too. They seem to have this aspect of making bad guys look good or become the good guys. The most infamous of that one is Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z. That guy has killed a lot of people, destroyed a lot of worlds, but there he is being a superhero. Just think about that for a minute, guys. It definitely seems like the more how the expansion's gone on, they definitely feel like if there is something that they can be deemed as positive or really well loved, that they can capitalize and capture with their audience in the following expansions, they will do that. So that's what it felt, that's what it feels like. So that's why the full scale development of this, that's why we don't have any videos, seem like the first wanted to get as last minute as they can with the feedback as the expansion has ended, or ending in this particular point in time, so to know what to include in the launch of the expansion. So that's what I feel like we're going to see. Let's continue. Okay, I also find it interesting. They talk about allied tribes this early on. This is what I'm starting to mean, that there is like something being this keynote for the new expansion, Dawn Trail, is quite different in terms of the delivery. There's nothing wrong about a new allied race, but during a keynote, which is the most important part of an expansion announcement, especially the very first one, seems a little strange to have such detail and focus on something like this, when in reality this is not the meat of the content. Or rather, historically, these have not been a meat of the content. That surprised me. Multiple new jobs, but I don't really care what jobs are added, if I'm brutally honest. But at the end of the video, I want to sort of conclude my thoughts on how this entails as an overarching thing to the game. Now this is where it starts. This is what core battle content. This is what really jumped out the most to me. So when we think about core battle content, what do we think about? We're thinking about the dungeons. We're thinking about the instant content or even overworld content, boss content, Essentially, you group up with other players and you hit things. And even Final Fantasy XIV and other MMOs, historically, this has always been grouping up together and fighting things. But they did this very differently to what I've noted, and also what they include as core battle content. So fates, the hunt, treasure hunts, and quest synced side quests. Fates has been in the game for a long time, but I wouldn't consider them core battle content. Hunts, not core at all. It's definitely there, but I wouldn't consider that core at all. Treasure hunts, no, these are all side quests. These are all side things. Fates traditionally was used as a means to also level. These days it's used as to get a side currency to get essentially vain or vanity items. Quest sync side quests. I'm surprised that I didn't even say item level synced. This is now. Remember when I said earlier, when you look at it from a corporate point of view, like if you've been to a corporate presentation, the order of the slides, the way you talk about the slide, the amount of information on a slide is very important, it's very telling. So we've got this coming first, so we could see some adjustments made to all of these. We could see adjustments made to all of these four that they see here, because they presented it first after the title. So we could see something more prominent with these. But with Square Enix, they don't add more resources. It gets taken from something else. So bear that in mind. New dungeons. To be expected, but there's something here that was very interesting. Listen to it together.
新たなダンジョンというのもこれまで通り同じボリュームでしっかり楽しんでいただけるように準備中です。
Of course, we are preparing as many new dungeons as you've come to expect.
There we go. Many new dungeons, as you come to expect. The game doesn't have a lot of dungeons. We've seen a vast reduction to what they've done in the past, where we've had 3 dungeons per patch release, major patches that is, then it went to 2, then it went to 1. So we actually have less dungeons. But when they say you come to expect means what we got in the previous expansion, we're not getting any more than that. So if that's our expectation, that's all we're getting. So we're not getting more dungeons. We're getting the same, and it almost feels like they don't want to have less dungeons per patch release. I mean, with Endwalker, they kind of bundled the trial bosses, the X-trial bosses, as a function of part of the main storyline, so you had to do that. Now this is where I start to have a really big problem. Duty support update. So I want to also go over this because I need to hear this again.
And yes, of course, we will also be bringing updates to duty support.
今回もですね、メインクエスト、対象となるダンジョンに関しては必ず対応されています。
Of course, we can promise that there will be duty support for all dungeons involved in the main story.
で、それ以外にもですね、このコンテンツサポーターいろんなアップデートをするんですが、ちょっとねストーリーに関わるのであんまり詳しく言えないです。
We also have some new plans for places that we can implement duty support and what we can do with it, but it is too related to the story for us to give you details.
ただ、 今回、暁の決明とね、いろいろコンテンツサポーターやってきたと思いますが、複数の新しいメンバーというのがコンテンツサポーター登場していきますので、その新しいキャラクターたちとの共闘というのを楽しみにしておいてください。
But I can tell you, so far we've been really focused on the Scions in duty support naturally, but we will be debuting a number of new characters for duty support.
もちろんですね、
So, look at it from a corporate point of view. The way they talked about something that I don't consider, or really shouldn't be considered core battle content, is duty support. So they've now brought up all of the expansions, I believe, in terms of the main story dungeon, to be part of that. And when I was making my video, the direction of 14 going forward, one of the things that I put down in that video was, once they've caught up, and obviously the add-on to the concurrent expansions, where they're going to go from there. It feels like once they're up to date with it, what that content going to replace? Are they going to start bringing that technology to other types of content? Are we going to see having NPCs that are AI NPCs in the overworld for you to do fates? To me, what I dislike is how this takes away from these, not just social aspect. I'm not saying you have to play with other players, but I do feel you do need to be required to group with other players to do content. And that takes away now, to embellish the corporate side of it. There was a large focus on it. We also see it was included in core battle content, so important. It's included as a very important thing. And the way Yoshi P was happily discussing it means that this is more of a prominent feature in this expansion, much bigger than the previous one, not just because they got up to date, but it's what they can do with it. And again, the game doesn't have more resources. It gets reallocation of resources from something else, so something else has suffered to get that into place. Essentially, they're adding and expanding content like Island Sanctuary. The fact that it has its own slide, like one single slide in big writing, and Yoshi P and the developers discussing the implementation of this and how happy they are for content like this to be in the game, doesn't pave well for battle content. For PvE battle content, I honestly think the game already has a lot of what you can consider lifestyle content. And they seem to be expanding it further. And that doesn't bode well for the amount of battle PvE content we're going to see at all. I'm not asking them to be detailed to what the stories or the exact items, but we need to look at how they're delivering these slides. Again, if you've ever been to a corporate presentation, when you see something in a single slide in big and you're talking just about that, that means it's extremely important. It's very important, and how its implementation directs and dictates the rest of the essentially the topic and delivery and what you intend to achieve. This is going to be bigger than people would anticipate. Him just saying Island Sanctuary, which in Endwalker isn't that big, but this is going to make it much bigger. I'm not saying they can't expand on that, but when I watch this slide and going into my experience of corporate presentations, that's not a good sign for me. So he's definitely shifted his priorities, his viewpoints on content and what should be in the game. Because stuff like this is very easy to develop for and possibly get. This may have like minimal development, but it might have bigger gains in terms of that. And now I talk about presentations and the way it's when you get a slide. We also look at the amount of information and what's actually on it. When you have a slide with a lot of information on it in subtopics, like we're seeing here, it means, yes, we're going to see new alliance raids, ultimate raids, surprised actually with that one, 8-player raids, talk about that in a second, variant dungeons. The fact that this is all in one now, the fact that this is all in one slide shows these aren't important to them anymore. The value, the effort that's probably going to go into each one of these 4 is even less. I'm not asking to say, show us the variant dungeons, show us what the alliance raids going to be, show us the boss raids or weapons or items or mechanics in the 8-player raids and ultimate raids. I'm not asking about that. I want to see more effort put into these. I want to see more resources put into this. Let's go over variant dungeons. Endwalker, at the very least, has a really pitiful reward structure. No one asked for 4-player dungeons to have no rewards. That's not what we've asked for. Alliance raids, I feel like you do them once, that's it. The mechanics are not interesting beyond the first time you do them. The 8-player raids, and I'm going to talk about, this is where I can talk about the addition of jobs. We're getting more job roles. Sorry, not roles. We're getting more jobs, more classes to play. But we still have an 8-player container for that. They need to increase that way more. It needs to be at least 12. Because if you have a bigger group container, 12 in this case, you could be more forgiving with your composition. It also means that it's easier to grow, and though it's small players, because the composition can be more forgiving, it means you can recruit easier for these raids. Because if you're 8, you're very tight in what you need to, or people that want to have. It doesn't also help that there is certain jobs way more popular than others. Because you're going to have, let's say, loads of people playing dancers and or samurais, and just like when you're recruiting, you get like my experience was the amount of melee that was samurais was obscene. When it comes to the range, it was just lots of dancers. It's just one of these things where having 8-player raids is very unforgiving with them adding more jobs, because people want to play certain ones more than others. And also, they haven't gone over if we're still going to have 4 bosses per tier. This is something they could have mentioned like in a separate slide by itself. This is what I mean by important. This has gone the wayside. I don't see them having a lot of effort into it. I don't think the mechanic's going to be that interesting. We'll have to see. But I was hoping to see like 6-8 boss player raids per tier, because the patches are getting longer in between. There used to be 6 months in between the Savage raids. Now they're about 9. And we could see that being pushing to 10 to 12 months in between. If you're only going to have 4 bosses doing that, with only 8-player raids, that's not good. If they're going to expand, if they're going to revamp other systems, other things. Do this. Really do that. But the fact that we see 4 things in one slide with no emphasis of or hints about how they're improving, expanding those systems. They don't care about this anymore. And I can assume we're probably only going to have one ultimate raid in this expansion. Speculation, but that's what I think. Probably something that the game has suffered a long time for was its graphics. They've updated, from my understanding, the pixel count screen wide, which is fine, but no anti-aliasing. That's been announced. We'll have to see if that's the case. We're not seeing any animation updates to this, just bear that in mind. Something that Blizzard did amazingly well with the when they did the graphic update, they also updated the animations. Also, part of this segment is Square Enix showcasing some new technology for their environment graphic LOD, I'm guessing, or just procedural generated technology. Something, what's the game called again? I'll try annotate it here.
So I think you might have seen the grass in the bottom right.
So I'm not against this, so that's kind of fine. If it helps speed up content, it's okay, but they don't really add new zones, as it were, as the expansion goes on. Maybe like mini zones for some sort of side quest, but in terms of the actual main quest, not really. So this feels more like for another game or for another project. Now this is system updates. Now when they call something system updates, is so much more different than what I would consider a system update. To me, that's something a lot more under the hood, a lot more mechanically based. But what they delivered here as we go on was a bit strange. If we had ray tracing or anti-aliasing,
benefit you're going to see from this graphic updates is an update to the die system.
that's not a system update. And they made this way too big a deal.
Getting a ton of feedback from people saying,
There wasn't a ton of feedback. There was some feedback. I'm sorry, just... It's very obvious to people who take the feedback, want to champion some cause within their customer service or community managers. I've always felt these days Square Enix's community managers are heavily biased towards a very certain demographic of players. Certainly what this entails to. I'm not actually against this system. I think it's fine to add in. I just think they're making a big deal out of it. Almost like it's one of those putting wool over your eyes or something like that. The expression to say, it's you talk about something to have people ignore the other things that they're not doing. That's what this feels like.
I really want to be able to die more.
And sadly, they know their demographic from that cheering you can hear. Also, this is getting more, what's the word I'm looking for? Slide. This is getting more attention in terms of, and the slides are a lot more prevalent compared to basically raids. PvE battle content, hitting things. Nope, we got this.
How possible.
But this is not a system update. I'm sorry.
7.0.
Again, that's a vanity item. That's not a system update. That's not an update within the core. So they seem to shift additional cosmetics, as it were, as something very under the hood, very important things. I think we can see the shift in player base and who they absolutely targeting here.
頭をかける
We're heading.
大変お待たせしていますが
Sorry for the long.
Now, finishing limit increase, which is more of a data and server pulling. That one's a little bit more that, but these are all vanity items. What system updates is this? If they were increasing party limit from 8 to 12, that's a system update. If they were giving anti-aliasing, ray tracing, that's a system update. If they, I don't know, just add more something to the engine, something more mechanically under the hood, yes. But not these. This should be under a cosmetic, but it seemed like they referred it as system updates as a means to, they don't have anything else.
Wait.
Oh right, this was the strategy board. That's a system update. That's not vanity, that's a very functional piece of in-game UI that you can utilize and share with other players. That should be under there. But can I just say, guys, I'm not against this. I think it's great being able to share strategy in-game with something visual. But it's the only game that does it. And you want to ask yourself why that is. I'll answer that. The skill, the average skill of the player base in this game is low. They need a lot of help. I'll give the free trial that 14 has credit where credit's due. It's actually the best in the business. Other MMOs do things a little bit differently. Guild Wars 2 has the base game for free, but the expansions are still to be paid. Elder Scrolls doesn't really have one. You do actually have to buy into that, but you can get that on sale. Warcraft has a free trial, but a really rubbish one. That's still rubbish to this day, just in general. Level 20 is the max, I believe, and you're limited, but there's so much to that game beyond level 20 you're missing out. They give you a lot to this, so credit where credit is due. I'm trying to think, what are other MMOs out there? I don't class Destiny 2 as an MMO because of the way the interaction with the players actually occurs. Yeah. But this is as far as it goes in terms of the keynote. So how can we conclude with some of this? This keynote, this Fanfest, in terms of the announcement for the next expansion and the features are coming, felt way more corporate. It definitely felt... Let's get us off. It felt more corporate, felt differently, and it's one of these things where usually with the Fanfest, with the announcements, we don't see that much difference. We usually we are expecting this kind of the same thing, but this one felt different to me. There was a change of tone, there was a change of direction, that really set it off for me, especially when you look at it from a corporate point of view. The way some of the features, and some of these features they've already have in the game, took more center stage and a more of an important subject heading, as it were. That was different. And it's very telling of how the development team view this game and the direction they wish to take it. In my video that I was making, I was talking about how they were absolutely taking away resources from the battle PvE content, which includes raids, dungeons, the whole lot. We've been asking for more of them. We've been asking for more Savage raids per tier. And something actually like the Mythic Plus system in Warcraft, with a reward system that justifies it. Taking bigger strides going the other way. They're absolutely investing in more into low development cost, targeting certain demographics. Like, they're not making a game because they believe in making a great game and believing in the content that they can deliver. They've absolutely laid the focus on a demographic, and then they're probably not in a position to talk about the details of raids, but that's not what I'm talking about. I just want to see how much commitment they have for it. But when you can read into slides, when you've been in a corporate presentation, the way the slides are presented, the amount of information on there, the language on there dictates the direction. And we saw way more focus, much more effort into the slides that was talking about stuff that isn't actually real battle content. And that does not sit well with me. The game does have good content. It has great classes, and I play Black Mage, I main that, and that is fun to play. But I've said it time and time and time again. Give me more content on a day or week to week basis that I can play that. When you're done with the Savage Raids, you're done with the Savage Raids that week. The format dungeons are really easy, and you just got the roulettes. And the roulettes have a couple of problems. And we didn't see any updates to how they can function on that. Or we didn't see anything in regards to them constantly high level syncing the expert roulettes. Come on, guys. I hate being high level synced, and I hate being level synced. The level syncing system in this game is awful because you don't get any skills. That would be an amazing system update if they can integrate that. But no topic at all. That's something that's probably talked about more than the die system. So Final Fantasy 14 from that keynote feels like this is a single player online game with some MMO aspects tacked on. We'll have to see how the future next Fanfest that we're going to have in October and whenever Japan is after that, with the material they're going to announce. But usually the first one is where they kind of mention some of the most important stuff. And this is what we have. It was a very long video, I think. So if you made it this far, guys, thank you for watching. Until next time.